after a very short break. Sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face through that. After a very long break from this series, we're finally returning to reviews of Teen Titans with part 1 of The End. Let me actually bring up my title card for it. Like, you guys can't see it, but if I can see it, if it's there, makes me feel like more of a professional. But yeah, part 1 of The End, the season 4 finale of the show, in which Raven becomes a portal for her outer god, demon father, Trigon, to come through to the mortal plane and effectively destroy the planet. Like, not really. The planet physically will still be there. But that's about all it'll be. It's just physically there. And he'll be ruling it. I guess his motivations are a little unclear to me. And originally I was going to talk about all 3 parts of this episode in one, admittedly longer than usual video. Because I didn't really remember this one super well going into rewatching the episode. But there's enough to talk about in this first part to just talk about this first part on its own. I don't know if I'll talk about the next 2 in one video or not. I don't remember them super well. Actually, I'm fairly certain I remember them less well than I even thought I did. But this one, at the very least, I want to talk about separately. Even if this video does end up being just kind of normal length, which feels inappropriate for such a major episode. But yeah, there's a lot to this one. It surprised me a lot, actually. Like, for example, I somehow had it in my head that the Trigon portal would just happen wherever Raven was. I had forgotten that Trigon actually needed her in that, like, Cult of Scath chamber in that old library that we saw a couple plot episodes ago. But knowing that she actually has to be there, and then seeing how she gets there in this episode, it actually recontextualized some stuff from the previous plot episode, which I said I thought wasn't great. Like, it was fine, but, like, wasn't as good as it could have been. And now I kind of understand why that episode was there more. Like, right down to stuff like, I mentioned in the review of that episode that there was a scene that didn't feel necessary, where Raven is transporting herself back to Azarath, and Trigon tries to stop her, or at least seemingly does, only for her to get there and find out that there's no help to be had there because Trigon already destroyed Azarath, and the people there talking to her are just illusions that he created to interact with her. And it didn't make sense. But now I understand why he did that. Now I understand that not only did he need her to be in the right place physically, but he also needed her to be in the right place mentally. And you don't get that at first. You don't get that at first in this episode, because after an absolutely fantastic sequence where Raven, realizing that this is the day that this is going to happen, goes out of her way to try to make her friends as happy as possible, which just, man, the heartstrings, man. After all that, and like that alone, that could have been the whole episode. It would have been a worthwhile episode. Slade shows up, having been sent along with an army of I almost said sentient, but I don't know that they were sentient. Animate flame monsters, like roughly humanoid animate flame monsters. He comes to seemingly take her from the tower, because the others have realized at this point that this is the day that it's supposed to happen. And they've revealed that they built a chamber in the tower that combines the best tech available to them with magic taken from Raven's own spellbooks to try to seal Trigon off from getting to her. And the fact that he sends Slade to get her would imply that the chamber was actually working. I would assert, though, that it didn't actually do anything, that it didn't actually matter. Because Trigon is still able to get to her. He communicates with her telepathically, because he doesn't need to get to her. He's already part of her. That's the entire reason why the portal had to be born of him. At least that's the way I read it. That's the entire reason the portal had to be born of him, had to be his own offspring. Because that way he's always with this person portal. They can't ever truly escape him. Which also reminds me, briefly, this is a bit of a tangent, but I want to praise how well this works as an analogy for abusive parenting and how abuse perpetuates itself generationally. Because as she's talking with Trigon in this episode, Raven goes back and forth with him, talking about how she's tried so hard to suppress the evil part of herself that came from him, not just like genetically, but from the way he has used her and intends to use her. And that felt so much, I didn't get this when I was a kid watching this, but that felt so much like she could have just as easily been talking about a violently abusive parent who instilled in her the potential to be violently abusive herself down the line, and how hard she's had to fight against that. Something clicked in my head when I came to that realization, and suddenly the episode became far more powerful to me. But yeah, so Slade shows up, and it seems like he intends to bust down the tower walls and drag her out of this chamber. But instead, he just stays outside and fights the Titans, and this is Neo Slade. They still stand no chance against him. They throw everything they have at him, and by extension, his fiery monster soldiers. Starfire throws a Genki Dama. Beast Boy calls upon the blessing of Hircine. And Cyborg literally drains all of his own power and all of the power from the entire tower, except I would assume that chamber where Raven is being kept, because it didn't seem to lose power, through some new tech that he's built into himself, and channels it all into a single blast, which, while it does disperse the flame creatures, they can just reform. They're literally just animate flames that can spark out of nowhere. So they can't actually die. And even Slade isn't even pushed back by it. That's how powerful he is now. And he just keeps attacking them. He doesn't walk right by them, which obviously he could do. If he's that nonplussed by their attacks, obviously he could walk right by them and walk right through the wall and get her. But instead he just keeps attacking the Titans. And I don't know if he was told to do that, or if Trigon just knew that it would be in his nature to do that. But Trigon uses it, and it's revealed that Slade is just there, and Slade doesn't even know this, he's just there to hurt the Titans. So that Trigon can go into Raven's mind and say, hey, he's hurting your friends. If you come with him willingly back to me, he'll stop. And that's Trigon's real plan, and that's when it clicked for me that she had to not only accept that this was inevitable, which is what the whole trip to Azarath was about. Trigon tried to make her as desperate as he could so she would go there and then feel more hopeless than she ever had, realizing that it had been destroyed. And not only did she finally have to accept that this was inevitable, 100%, give in to it, but she had to come back to him willingly in order for this to work. And it's really telling that he pops into her head and starts talking about this, starts goading her towards doing this, at the moment that she starts to think maybe, because of these people, maybe she can fight. Maybe this doesn't have to happen. Maybe with the help of these great friends that she has made, she can escape what is supposed to be her destiny. Which is interesting. All of their tech meant nothing, I think. All of their efforts to help her magically meant nothing, but there is something about this bond which makes her strong enough to resist Trigon. And I do remember enough about the next couple episodes to know that that does come into play later. So that's really cool. It's really cool that it's foreshadowed here without being explicitly called out. And I gotta say, I mentioned this back in, I can't remember the title of it, but it was like the third episode of the season, the first plot episode of the season, The Birthmark. Is that what it was called? The Birthmark? I think that's what it's called. I remember saying back in that review, I think, it's been months. Maybe more than just months. It might have been like a whole freaking year. I don't remember. But it's been a very long time since I talked about that episode. But if I recall, I remember saying that the episode, while it's probably the best episode for build-up in the entire series, and while this is also a very good episode for build-up, I still agree with that prior statement. It's made even better knowing what's coming. But man, having started to revisit what's coming, that is doubly true now. The lore in this is, again, I don't know a ton of the comic book lore for this arc. I know kind of the bare bones of it. But knowing the lore for this in the comics, this is a kind of stripped down version of it. It's a more, this is a cartoon version of it. but it's still so intricately woven. It's very, very good. And it hurts so much more because the way the show is animated with the big expressive eyes and it actually being voice acted by some of the best voice actors in the industry, it's so clear through their every interaction how much Raven loves these people, how much she loves the other Titans, and her whole thing about how she tried to do good with her powers in the time that she had to try to make up in some small amount for the harm that she knew she was going to do down the line. It hurts so much more because you know that she's talking about them in that group of people she's going to harm. And on one hand, it's heroic of her to go off and start this early to foreshorten their suffering. But on the other hand, it shows how, while there is strength for her, her friends can also be a weakness. She's felt separated from them this entire time, like she was on her own even when she was part of their group, because she had this legacy hanging over her head. And because of that, because she was never really truly one of them, she never really truly felt like she was one of them, no matter how much she clearly wanted to be, those bonds were able to be wielded against her like a weapon. It's the rare example of when something can be shown to be a source of strength and a legitimate weakness at the same time. It's very well written, is my point. Like, I say that a lot about this show. This is an extremely well-written show. But it doesn't stop being true just because I've said it a bunch of times. It is worth reiterating because the show keeps reminding us over and over again why that's the case and how that's the case. I also absolutely love that the episode opens, and I'm jumping back to the beginning of the episode now. I apologize. I don't really do the whole summation thing in my videos anymore anyway, in like chronological order, so you guys should be fine with it by now. I like how the episode opens with her and Robin on the top of the tower, just enjoying the sunrise. Because one, it highlights the fact that their specific bond has been an important part of this arc overall so far, but also it's such an interesting contrast, because Robin's just up there to experience the start of a new day, which I find very interesting because he was raised by Batman, who I cannot imagine being a morning person, considering that he, stays up all night every night fighting bad guys and getting his ass kicked. But I guess Robin isn't a morning person. He just likes the sunrise, so he's up there just getting a look at the new day, facing the new day head on with optimism. Whereas Raven's up there, looking upon what she sees as the last sunrise she's ever going to see. Because I don't think the show is clear enough about it yet after this point. But Raven isn't just the portal in the sense that she has to be the one to speak the magic words to open the portal. She is physically the portal. She will physically become the portal to let Trigon through. It's also very interesting. It wasn't hard to guess that Trigon was using Slade. Slade keeps talking about, he talked about it a little bit in the previous plot episode, and he talked about it in this one too, that there's something he wants from Trigon, that Trigon promised him something, and he even says, when I deliver her, you have to give me what you promised, and Trigon agrees. Trigon then changes the deal, claiming that he actually delivered Raven himself by convincing her to come, which was clearly his plan the entire time, and Slade is pissed. But it doesn't matter, because as powerful as Slade is, even though Slade is effectively Trigon's avatar on this realm that he can't come to yet, because the portal's not open, Slade is nothing to him, and he's seemingly destroyed before we even find out what it was that Trigon was supposed to give him. I know that's not the case, technically speaking, but man, what a cool moment, because Slade, even, I think it was Robin gave a big speech, not even a really big speech, just kind of a little offhanded speech as they're all trying to convince Raven to stay in the chamber they built, that Trigon, regardless of who he is, he hasn't dealt with the Titans yet. There's always hope. But if the full force of their combined powers isn't enough to deter Slade, to harm him at all, and yes, I know Trigon gave Slade these powers, he can ungive them, right? So that means that him owning Slade so quickly isn't probably an accurate comparison of their power levels. But the fact that he handles Slade so easily shows, at the very least, he is more powerful than Slade, and they couldn't do anything against Slade. The only one who even stood a chance was Raven, and I have my doubts that even she could have put him down permanently, without, drawing on Trigon's power herself, which might have made things even worse. We don't even know. This is just such a very good episode. I really expected it to just kind of be like, any other part 1 of 3, where it sets stuff up. But no, this episode has a very coherent beginning, middle, and end, while still dangling plot threads out that the next 2 episodes can pick up and run with. It's excellent. I still think in terms of visuals and in terms of storytelling, the Birthmark is still a better setup episode, which is cool because both of them come from the same arc of the show. But this one's really freaking good too. And there was some cool stuff in this one. Cyborg's big plug into the tower beam firing sequence thing was really rad. The rest of the fight was kind of repetitive and boring, but that was awesome. I can't tell you how hyped I am to watch the next couple episodes and finish out this arc of the show. This episode, coming back to this series after such a long time on such a big episode, I think is going to help me stay motivated to keep my new upload schedule, because I'm just super hyped to talk about this show more than I have been in a very long time. That said, as per usual, I'd like to know, what do you guys think of the Teen Titans episode The End Part 1, if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over in my Discord or my Tumblr. Links to both in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.